When you give too much to a man, it doesn't always land the way you hope. You might think the more you do, the more he'll see your heart, the more he'll appreciate your sacrifices, the more he'll recognize your value. But the truth is, when something feels endless, people stop noticing it. Imagine water flowing from a faucet. If it never turns off, you don't rush to save it, you don't appreciate it, you take it for granted. Overgiving works the same way. Instead of sparking deeper gratitude, it can quietly create dependence. He doesn't have to work for your effort, because you've already given it away without asking for anything in return. Now, it's not that he's a bad person. It's human nature. When something costs us nothing, we treat it like it has little value. And when you constantly pour out your time, your energy, your love, without any pause or balance, it shifts the way he sees both you and the relationship. What once felt like a gift becomes an expectation. What once made him feel grateful now just feels like the standard. And you start noticing that the thank yous don't come as often, that the small gestures back toward you become less frequent, and that the balance of appreciation starts to fade. And here's the painful part. While you're giving more and more, you start feeling less and less seen. You start to wonder, why isn't he noticing everything I do? Why isn't he stepping up in the same way? That's because overgiving doesn't actually inspire reciprocity. It creates imbalance, and imbalance slowly turns into resentment. You resent him for not giving back, and he unconsciously resents you for making the relationship feel heavy, like he's receiving more than he's earning. It's almost like when someone pays for everything all the time. At first, it feels amazing, but after a while, it starts to feel uncomfortable. You stop feeling like a partner and start feeling like a passenger. That's what happens in relationships when you give too much. It doesn't build stronger connection. It removes the natural rhythm of give and take that keeps things alive. Men need to feel they're contributing. They need to feel they're putting something in, that they're investing, that they're earning their place beside you. If you remove that opportunity by over-delivering, you don't actually make him feel secure. You make him feel passive. And passive energy kills attraction. This is where a shift has to happen. Instead of giving everything up front, you hold back enough space for him to meet you halfway. You don't pour endlessly, you pour wisely. You make sure what you give is received with value, not just consumed without thought. Because the truth is, appreciation grows when there's contrast. When there are moments of space, moments where he has to lean in, moments where your love is offered but not guaranteed, that's when he sees how much it means. It's not about withholding love, it's about protecting the balance of it. Giving is beautiful, but overgiving steals its beauty. Love that flows in both directions feels light, powerful, and steady. Love that only flows one way feels heavy, draining, and fragile. And if you keep giving without pause, you'll eventually realize that he's not appreciating you more. He's simply getting used to receiving without effort. So when you catch yourself giving endlessly, thinking it will win him over, stop and remember this. Giving doesn't lose its power when it's measured. It loses its power when it's limitless. The goal isn't to give everything, it's to give in balance, because that's the only way he will truly see your value and rise to meet it. One of the things people don't always recognize is how giving too much shifts the balance of power in a relationship. Relationships work best when there's a rhythm, a natural back and forth, where both people contribute and both people receive. But when one person is constantly pouring in and the other is mostly on the receiving end, the dynamic starts to tilt. At first, it might not feel obvious. You're just being generous, thoughtful, loving. But over time, that imbalance starts to create a different type of energy between you. Think about it like a seesaw. If both people take turns pushing off the ground, there's movement, there's balance, there's fun. But if only one person keeps pushing, eventually it just gets stuck, weighted on one side. That's what happens emotionally when you're always the one giving. Instead of building equality, it builds a hierarchy, and in that hierarchy, the giver slowly sinks lower while the receiver rises higher, not because he asked for it, but because the balance you once had is no longer there. When a man feels like he doesn't have to give back to maintain the relationship, his role changes. He starts to feel like he's in control, like he's the one being catered to. And when that happens, his respect for the relationship can shift without him even realizing it. He may not consciously think, "I'm in charge here," but the dynamic will tell him that. And while he might enjoy it at first, over time it doesn't create deeper connection. It creates distance. Why? Because respect grows where there is balance. When he sees that you are just as invested in yourself as you are in him, when he sees that your energy isn't endless, he values the parts of you that you choose to share. But when the scale tips too far, the sense of equality begins to fade. And here's the danger: once imbalance sets in, it doesn't just affect how he sees you, it affects how you see yourself. You start questioning whether you're enough, whether you should be doing even more to hold things together, when in reality you've already been giving too much. You begin to feel unappreciated, even invisible, while he unconsciously grows more comfortable in the space of receiving. That cycle can go on for a long time, until one day you look up and realize you've been carrying most of the relationship on your own. The thing is, men notice balance even if they can't always explain it. They know when they're pulling their weight, and they know when they're not. And here's the truth: most men don't respect a dynamic where they're allowed to give very little. It doesn't challenge them, it doesn't push them to grow, and it doesn't inspire them to rise up in the relationship. What inspires respect is when he feels you have standards, when you're not afraid to expect balance, when you're not afraid to pull back instead of overextending, when you understand that your role is not to keep everything afloat on your own. And that's why giving too much is never the answer. It doesn't build closeness, it builds an uneven scale where one person feels drained and the other feels entitled. A healthy relationship isn't about one person giving endlessly. It's about both people leaning in, both people working, both people valuing the exchange of love and effort. Men respect boundaries more than sacrifice, and that can feel counterintuitive at first. We're taught to believe that the more we give up, the more someone will notice our love. The more we sacrifice, the more they'll understand our commitment. But in reality, when you constantly put yourself second and give everything away without limits, it doesn't earn deeper respect. It often signals desperation. It says, without words, "I'll do anything to keep you." And that message doesn't create admiration, it creates imbalance. Boundaries, on the other hand, speak volumes without you having to explain. They say, "I know who I am, I know what I deserve, and I'm not afraid to protect it." And men notice that. They pay attention when you have limits. And not because you're shutting them out, but because those limits show you have a standard. And people treat you at the level you set your standards. If you're willing to erase your needs for someone else's comfort, that person will eventually believe your needs aren't as important as theirs. But if you're clear about what matters to you and you're consistent in holding that line, that's where real respect grows. Think about it this way: when you give without boundaries, it's like handing someone unlimited credit. At first, it feels great. They get everything they want without question. But after a while, it loses its meaning because there's no weight to it. It's endless, and therefore it's undervalued. But when there's a line, when there's a point where you say, "This is as far as I go," suddenly what you offer carries weight. It has meaning, it has value, and it feels intentional. Men don't fall in love with endless sacrifice. They fall in love with women who know how to honor themselves. They might enjoy the sacrifice in the moment, but what keeps their respect long-term is realizing you're not willing to sacrifice your whole identity just to keep them happy. And that's where attraction deepens, because boundaries create space for him to step in, to contribute, to share responsibility. Overgiving takes that away, it removes his chance to rise and meet you. And here's the hardest part to accept. Sacrifice without boundaries can make you look like you're trying to earn love instead of knowing you're worthy of it already. That energy is felt. It changes how he sees you, and it changes how you see yourself. You might start believing the only way to hold his attention is to keep giving more and more. But what you don't see is that he'll respect you less with every piece of yourself you give away. Respect doesn't grow where there are no limits. It grows where there's balance, where both people have room to give and receive. So instead of asking, how much more can I sacrifice? The better question is, where do I draw the line? Because that line doesn't push love away, it protects it. It makes what you offer real. It tells him without words that you know your worth, and if he wants to be in your life, he has to honor that worth too. Because when you set boundaries, you don't lose love, you gain respect. Men respect boundaries more than sacrifice, and that can feel counterintuitive at first. We're taught to believe that the more we give up, the more someone will notice our love. The more we sacrifice, the more they'll understand our commitment. But in reality, when you constantly put yourself second and give everything away without limits, it doesn't earn deeper respect. It often signals desperation. It says, without words, I'll do anything to keep you. And that message doesn't create admiration, it creates imbalance. Boundaries, on the other hand, speak volumes without you having to explain. They say, I know who I am, I know what I deserve, and I'm not afraid to protect it. And men notice that. They pay attention when you have limits. Not because you're shutting them out, but because those limits show you have a standard, and people treat you at the level you set your standards. If you're willing to erase your needs for someone else's comfort, that person will eventually believe your needs aren't as important as theirs. But if you're clear about what matters to you and you're consistent in holding that line, that's where real respect grows. Think about it this way. When you give without boundaries, it's like handing someone unlimited credit. At first, it feels great. They get everything they want without question. But after a while, it loses its meaning because there's no weight to it. It's endless, and therefore it's undervalued. But when there's a line, when there's a point where you say, this is as far as I go, suddenly what you offer carries weight. It has meaning, it has value, and it feels intentional. Men don't fall in love with endless sacrifice. They fall in love with women who know how to honor themselves. They might enjoy the sacrifice in the moment, but what keeps their respect long term is realizing you're not willing to sacrifice your whole identity just to keep them happy. And that's where attraction deepens, because boundaries create space for him to step in, to contribute, to share responsibility. Overgiving takes that away, it removes his chance to rise and meet you. And here's the hardest part to accept. Sacrifice without boundaries can make you look like you're trying to earn love instead of knowing you're worthy of it already. That energy is felt. It changes how he sees you, and it changes how you see yourself. You might start believing the only way to hold his attention is to keep giving more and more. But what you don't see is that he'll respect you less with every piece of yourself you give away. Respect doesn't grow where there are no limits. It grows where there's balance, where both people have room to give and receive. So instead of asking, how much more can I sacrifice? The better question is, where do I draw the line? Because that line doesn't push love away, it protects it. It makes what you offer real. It tells him without words that you know your worth, and if he wants to be in your life, he has to honor that worth too. Attraction is a delicate thing, and most people don't realize how easily it can be smothered. When you give too much, too soon, it doesn't create closeness the way you think it will. Instead, it often does the opposite. It starts to suffocate the space that attraction needs to breathe. Healthy attraction is built on rhythm, on push and pull, on moments of effort followed by moments of rest. But when you're always the one chasing, always the one reaching, always the one filling in the silence with giving, It leaves no room for him to lean in. Men are drawn to space where they can pursue, where they can initiate, where they feel the desire to move toward you on their own. If everything is already being done for them, every call made, every plan arranged, every sacrifice offered, there's nothing left for them to chase, and when there's nothing to chase, interest slowly fades. It's not because you're not valuable, it's because human nature craves balance. Attraction is fueled when both people are invested. If one person is doing all the giving, the other eventually starts pulling back, not because they don't care, but because the dynamic feels heavy. Think about fire. A flame needs oxygen to burn. If you cover it completely, even with good intentions, you put it out. Giving too much is like smothering that flame. You believe you're nurturing it, protecting it, making it stronger. But in reality, you're cutting off the very air it needs to stay alive. Attraction is no different. When you give without pause, you take away his opportunity to act, to show interest, to prove himself. Without that effort from him, the spark starts to weaken, and here's where it gets tricky. The more he pulls back, the more you feel the urge to give even more, hoping it will bring him closer again. But that cycle only pushes him further away, because now he feels the weight of your effort and none of the freedom to give his own. He doesn't feel inspired to invest. He feels pressured to respond. And pressure doesn't build attraction. It destroys it. What actually draws someone in is when they feel like they have a place in your life, not when they feel like they're your entire focus. When they see that you're generous, but also that you have balance. That you're caring, but also that you care for yourself. That you give, but you don't overextend to the point of losing your own identity. That balance creates mystery. It creates curiosity. It leaves enough room for him to wonder, to pursue, to appreciate the effort you choose to share with him. And that's what makes love feel alive. Not one person doing everything, but both people contributing in their own way. Too much giving removes that balance and turns something exciting into something predictable. It's not that generosity kills attraction. It's that overgenerosity removes the oxygen from the flame. So if you find yourself giving more than you're receiving, if you notice you're doing all the reaching, all the planning, all the sacrificing, take a step back. Not to punish him, not to play games, but to protect the space where attraction grows. Because when you leave room for him to invest, you'll see his effort rise to meet yours. Men connect effort with value. It's not always about the words they say, it's about the actions they take. What they put effort into is what they respect. What they invest in is what they care about, and what they work for is what they hold on to. When you remove that effort by giving too much too soon, you unintentionally take away his chance to value what you bring. It feels good in the beginning. You're showing care, you're showing love, you're making things easy. But in the long run, it costs you more than it gives. When something comes without effort, it's rarely appreciated the same way. Think about the difference between someone being handed a car and someone working months, maybe years, to save up and buy one. The person who worked for it treasures it. They wash it, they protect it, they treat it like it matters because they know what it cost them. The one who got it for free might enjoy it, but it doesn't hold the same weight. That same principle applies in relationships. If you hand over your time, your attention, your energy without requiring any effort on his part, it doesn't hit him the same way. It feels good in the moment, but it doesn't anchor him to the relationship. Effort builds emotional investment. It's what makes him feel like he's part of something, like he has a role in building it, like it's not just being handed to him. And that sense of earning something isn't about games. It's about human nature. We value what we pour into. We commit to what we've worked for. And if he hasn't had to put in effort, his commitment will be shallow, not because he doesn't care about you as a person, but because he hasn't been given the chance to build that connection through action. This is why balance matters. It's not about withholding love, it's about leaving room for him to step in. When you overgive, you do all the work, and he never gets to experience the satisfaction of pursuing, the pride of contributing, or the bond that comes from showing up for someone else. And without that, the relationship feels one-sided. He's there, but he's not invested in the same way. You feel tired from carrying it, and he feels detached because he hasn't had to put anything into it. The irony is, the more you do, the less he feels he has to do, and the less he does, the more you feel you need to do. It becomes a cycle that leaves you drained and him unmotivated. But when you step back and give him the space to put in effort, the whole dynamic shifts. His actions start to line up with his words. He begins to show that he wants to be there, that he values what you bring, because now he's contributing too. And the more he contributes, the more connected he feels, not just to you, but to the relationship itself. That's why you should never underestimate the power of letting him invest. The right man won't see your boundaries or your pauses as rejection. He'll see them as an opportunity to rise, to prove, to build something real. And when he works for you, he values you in a way that words alone could never capture. The truth is, not every man responds to giving in the same way. Some will take advantage of it, and others will rise to meet it. The difference isn't in how much you give, it's in who you're giving to. The wrong man will see your generosity as an open door to take more. He'll lean back, let you carry the weight, and never feel the need to contribute because he knows you'll fill in the gaps. But the right man doesn't look at your giving as something to exploit. He sees it as something to respect. He doesn't want you to lose yourself just to love him. He wants balance because he knows that balance is what makes a partnership last. This is why it's so important to pay attention to how a man responds, not just to what you give, but to the boundaries you place around it. The wrong man will push against those boundaries, test them, or even punish you for having them. The right man will honor them. He'll understand that your time, your energy, and your love are valuable, and that being in your life is a privilege, not a guarantee. That difference is everything, because it reveals whether you're with someone who is capable of building with you, or someone who's only capable of taking from you. And here's what makes this so powerful. Balance doesn't just protect you, it reveals him. It shows you if he's truly interested in creating something meaningful, or if he's simply comfortable receiving without giving back. That's why giving too much too soon isn't just about the risk of draining yourself, it's about missing the chance to see who he really is. Because a man's response to balance tells you everything you need to know about his character. When you hold back just enough space for him to step in, the right man will meet you there. He'll put in effort. He'll invest. He'll want to know that he's bringing value to your life, not just benefiting from it. That's what makes love feel safe and steady. But if you never allow for that space, if you constantly overextend, you rob yourself of the clarity that balance brings. You'll never really know if he would have risen to meet you because you never gave him the chance, and that's what it comes down to. Giving isn't the problem. Loving isn't the problem. The problem is when you give without balance, when you pour endlessly into someone who isn't pouring back. The wrong man will let you drown in that cycle, but the right man will pull you up and match your energy. That's how you know you're with someone worth building with, because he doesn't just take from your giving, he values it enough to give in return. So the lesson is simple. Don't measure the strength of a relationship by how much you can give. Measure it by how much balance exists between you. Because the wrong man will drain you when you give too much, but the right man will respect you more when you give just enough and leave room for him to meet you.